Hey, I'm Mike, and this is a quick reference guide to blending modes in Clip Studio Paint and Photoshop. We're talking about soft and hard light modes in this video. The way we have our layers set up, this bottom layer is just a scan of a colored pencil and gouache drawing of Jim Carrey that I did, and then on top of it we have our adjustment layer set to soft light mode. So we're going to do soft light and hard light, and since hard light is basically just a more intense effect of soft light, we'll just combine them together because there's not really a separate explanation. These combinatorial modes, soft and hard light, are really good for increasing contrast in areas, slight color shifts. They're good traditional rendering tools. You can use them in a great number of ways. They don't create super extreme effects that, you have to use sparingly, or, turn the opacity down to even get a usable effect if it's not an explosion or something. So, the previous video I did was overlay mode. So overlay, soft light, and hard light, or all three of them, work similarly in that when the value is very high, it lightens, and when the value is low, it darkens. But it's not like overriding the pixels, like being on top. Like if you were to just put this over, that's what it would look like if I were to just brush over that with this purple color. But on soft light mode, you can see it's a very different effect, and we don't get those huge color shifts to purple. There is a calculation and a compare of the pixels, and then it'll change the value that way. That way, when you use these modes, you still get the same relationship between the pixels. So you can also think of soft light as being a combination of dodge and burn, and then hard light being a combination of multiply and screen, sort of. That hard light works a little bit differently than that. But overlay mode is actually multiply and screen. And I have a video on that, and I like that mode a great deal. So let's use soft light here to just add in some purplish pink shadows and kind of make this piece more dramatic, if that was our goal. The brush that I'm using is just a kind of textured spray paint brush. Just a regular old textured brush, nothing fancy. We could do this with any kind of brush. I could do it with here's just a regular paint brush, and just turn the opacity down just a little bit. So it's a bit of a burn like this, and then if we wanted to just say create some skin highlights, Alright, so we've created a little bit more of a dramatic lighting scenario here. Now let's see what happens if we swap from soft light to hard light. Not great, right? Yeah, these are not interchangeable in terms of their effects. While, all of this looks fine and is blended down perfectly reasonably when the effect is really subtle. When you intensify that effect, that's not the case at all. So if you're going to use hard light mode, which is fine, but it may be the case that you want to operate maybe starting at 70% opacity or something like that, and working in your shadows and your shapes, and then turning it down or turning it up and seeing if that works. You can always, another way to do this is to, you can put all this really intense stuff in and then add over the top. You can blur it out with like a huge blur to kind of soften up all the edges, or even use some kind of smudge tool to create really interesting shadow effects, which I like to do with these heavier handed ones. When smudging, well, you'd use the smudge tool in Photoshop, and I'm using they call it the blend tool in Mega Studio, and you could rub all these things down and kind of get some interesting, kind of almost like posterized lines, if that was the effect that you were going for. And of course, it depends on the type of blending you're doing. You could just use a real textured brush and smooth all that stuff out completely, and still get a really rendered, finished look. But as with all these, it's completely non-destructive. So if we want to start back from this kind of washed out, really bright scan, then we can do that too. So that is how soft light and hard light work. If you have questions, leave them below, or suggestions for other videos or questions about the things that I did here. If not, all of these videos are available on my channel. So like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.